Well, good evening. Obviously, I'm Sheriff Joe Lombardo from Clark County, and I'm here to talk to you about the tragic event that's taken place and is currently taking place at the Mandalay Bay out on the Las Vegas Boulevard South. We experienced an active shooter situation approximately 10:08 p.m. tonight, this evening. We had calls come into dispatch of multiple shots being fired from the direction of the Mandalay Bay towards the Route 91 concert that was taking place on the east side of Las Vegas Boulevard. Through investigation and response, we determined there was a shooter on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. Officers responded to that location and engaged the suspect at that location. He is dead currently. He has been identified. He is a local resident. I will not release his name at this time, but we are interested in a companion that is traveling with him, and her name is, and I will provide you the name, so please be accurate on this, is Mary Lou Danley, Marilou. Last name spelled Danley. She is a Asian female, approximately 4'11", weight of 111 pounds. We have not located her at this time, and we are interested in talking to her for follow-up. Bay. So there's a couple of things that need to occur at this time. One is the Red Cross is responding to the headquarters here at the police department at 400 South Martin Luther King to receive any phone calls from family members who are trying to locate their family that attended the concert and aren't unable to contact them. So that number will be established here shortly, and we'll get it out to you to publicize it here shortly. Additionally, anybody that may have cell phone video or any type of video associated with this event that would be a benefit to the investigation, please respond to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department headquarters at 400 South Martin Luther King, and we will take custody of that video. So if you have it, you evaluate it, and you think it would be a benefit, please bring that down to the headquarters. So standing with me is a special agent in charge of the FBI, Aaron Rouse. He is assisting with the investigation, which is ongoing. And then we have Fire Chief Greg Castle from Clark County Fire, and they are assisting with all the victims. Now, as far as number of victims, I cannot give you an accurate number at this point. We have well in the excess of 100 plus injured and excess of 20 plus that have died at this point. So we will get those numbers to you accurately as soon as we can. But please bear with us. This is an ongoing investigation, but we are comfortable that the primary aggressor in this event has expired or passed away and is no longer a threat. There's been multiple phone calls and accusations or conjecture coming through social media that there's multiple shooters at other resorts. That has been proven to be false. Additionally, there's been accusations or beliefs there's some explosives going off. That is also false. The only explosive contained in this event was from our SWAT team breaching the room. So please, we are pretty confident that there is no longer a threat other than we are attempting to locate the person of interest. Yeah, I have two police officers that are currently at the hospital, one in critical condition, the other one minor injuries. But there are other police officers that were off duty attending the concert that have expired. We don't have those individuals identified at this point. Right now, we believe it's 100 plus injured and 20 plus dead. Okay, and I don't want to give you an accurate number because I do not have it at this point. I still want them to shelter in place. They will be contacted by first responders, and they'll advise them when they're free to go. It's better to shelter in place than to be unaware. We believe there's a couple off-duty officers that were attending the concert that may have died. We don't have them identified yet. Well, it is. It's a devastating time, and it's unfortunate. And, you know, we have been talking about active shooters in the past, and it's unfortunate it did occur here. But we have responded to the scene, and we're doing the best we can to provide safety for the survivors. And right now, we believe it's a sole actor, a lone wolf type actor, and we have the place under control. No, I cannot. All right, thank you very much. We'll do regular briefings, and we'll advise you of the schedule as they come forward. Thank you. Kevin, you come up. Well, good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know, I am Sheriff Lombardo for Clark County. I don't have very much more to update you with from our previous briefings. One thing in particular that has changed in the negative is our body count. You know what, that's the wrong way to say it. The number of people that have died associated with this event has increased. Right now we're using the number of 58. I just was informed that it may be 59 of an individual that may have expired at Sunrise Hospital. So in normal fashion, I do not want to give you bad information, so please do not press me on that number until we get further into this investigation. The number of injured, we are using the number of 515. And as you can tell, as the hours go by, that number continues to increase. We have not received any additional intelligence associated with the suspect. We have completed the search warrant in Mesquite. I am not aware of any derogatory information that we can utilize to furtherance of this investigation at this point, but we have just recovered items, and it will take a little while to evaluate that information. Eventually, in the next few hours, actually, I don't want to give you a skewed timeline, but approximately 1 p.m. we will request the family members to respond to the convention center area to utilize a larger space, and we could bring in the victim advocates to assist with the family members in the long term. As you can tell, I have several individuals to my rear that would like to make comment. Reference the ISIS statement. I want to bring that up now, so I give the opportunity to Special Agent Rouse to respond to that from the FBI. And he will explain what we know now reference ISIS claiming this individual. Thank you.
Good morning. As this event unfolds, we have determined to this point no connection with an international terrorist group. As this investigation continues, we will continue to work with our partners to ensure that this is factually, thoroughly, and absolutely investigated to be able to bring comfort and peace back to this community. Thank you.
So I'm happy to answer some questions. As you know, the investigation is continuing, so please do not get too detailed on your questions, because I probably will not be able to answer it at this time.
Sure. Was able to break through the windows? Was he able to open the windows, or did he smash the windows? Have you pieced that together?
We believe he had a device similar to a hammer to smash the windows.
Sheriff, so far I've heard a description of the suspect as a lone wolf. Is the investigation looking into any potential ties, even loose ties to extremist groups?
Well, obviously we will do that. We will run it down to the very end, but right now, at face value, we haven't been able to identify that.
Sheriff, you said he checked in on Thursday, the 28th, to the hotel.
I believe that's accurate.
Did he have tickets to the concert?
I have no idea. So.
Do you know what he has done between checking in and
No,
last night?
we're following up on that. There will be hours and hours and hours of video surveillance that we will have to recall with the cooperation of the MGM.
Sure, just to apprise on his safety, we've seen your center upstairs where you keep,
The Fusion Center?
correct. There are cameras everywhere. Practically every inch of the city is covering a camera. Outdoors, indoors. How did this happen?
Well, I don't understand what you're alluding to. How could it happen? This is an individual who was described as a lone wolf. I don't know how it could have been prevented if we didn't have any prior knowledge to this individual. It wasn't evident that he had weapons in his room. We have determined that there has been employees going to and fro from his room, and nothing nefarious was noticed at this point. That's what we know now. So.
Sheriff, first responders were integral to stopping more deaths. Can you describe how a multi-agency effort and strike teams were able to find the suspect?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely correct. So any special event that takes place in the southern Nevada region, it's required by NRS to supply police officers to ensure security. The Mandalay Bay did a great job of hiring police officers. They had sufficient staffing for the concert. And when this individual decided to fire upon the crowd, which was approximately 22,000 individuals, it's very difficult to manage that size crowd, and you have to ensure you have the proper staffing. And as described, our officers responded immediately in conjunction with the fire department as soon as the fire department arrived, but they were able to identify where the weapon was being discharged from in a proximity. It's hard to tell what floor it is from the outside, but once they gained entry into the hotel in conjunction with security and through phone calls from patrons, they were able to cull it down to a possible floor. Once they made entry onto the hallway, they immediately knew what room was in question.
Sheriff, there's some dramatic reports about what exactly happened in the room when SWAT officers entered, that maybe there was so much smoke from the shells that the smoke alarms were going off. Is there any truth to any of that?
I don't know. I haven't been told about any smoke alarms, but I know that he had killed himself, and exactly we'll have to go through our body-worn camera and existing video whether we engaged him at the same approximate time or not.
Sheriff, you said you didn't believe that this was connected to ISIS. Do you have any idea of what kind of motives we could be looking at?
No, ma'am. I can't get into the mind of a psychopath at this point.
Sheriff,
Was there any injured or deceased come from the hotel? Were they all in the concert, or were any in the hotel area?
I'm not sure, because we had people that were deceased and injured outside the vicinity of the concert area, so it would be hard to determine or make that determination at this point. We're obviously going to have to talk to all those injured individuals to make that assessment.
How many people who were injured were shot, and how many were injured running away?
I don't know, ma'am. The people have been displaced in 5 separate hospitals, so it's going to require an extensive review of that communication with them to determine that. So thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time, and I appreciate.
And I mean, how long do you think the shooting actually lasted? How long was the shooting out the crowd?
We are still putting that timeline together.
Sheriff, can you give us a timeline of his movements?
When did he shoot the security guard, and did he continue shooting out of the window after he shot the security guard?
I know that he shot the one security guard up on the 32nd floor, but I don't know if he continued to shoot after that or not.
Give us detail on his movements.
Hold on.
Detail on his movements, the 24, 48, 72 hours before the shooting.
That's
Any detail on what he did, where he went.
That's what our detectives and our partners are working on right now. It will be some time before we are able to give you that in a chronological order and with a amount of confidence that it's accurate.
Did he request that hotel room?
I don't know that yet.
Did he have a computer in the room?
We did see several pieces of media, including a computer.
Have you examined it? Does it give you anything about motive?
It's ongoing.
Special Agent Rouse, one other question. After the raid in Reno, can you tell us anything about what was taken there, if any weapons, explosives, computers, or clues that give us something about motive?
Nothing that I can speak of, and that scene is still being resolved as we speak.
Let me emphasize something to you that might help. I know that you are all very eager to find out exactly what his motive was or what was going through his head or what he was doing up to 2 weeks ago. I promise you the sheriff will provide that information when we have confirmed it. It doesn't make sense for us to put out information that is not accurate and isn't timely and reliable. So please have some patience with our agency and our partners to get you that information. I promise you we will provide it to you when the time comes.
Can you explain how they got that many
Hold
guns
on.
into a hotel?
What was your question, sir?
Just what time exactly did his room get breached?
I don't have, do you guys have that? No.
I imagine someone must have that.
We have a time log of everything that we do, and that's what the detectives will be putting together as part of their investigation, is from start to finish and including that entire timeline. So we'll probably have more information on that probably tomorrow.
Okay, before we get too long and too contracted in this press interview, I'll answer your questions, Ken. I'll ask a couple additional more, and then I want acknowledgement of the people standing behind me. As you can see, it's a congressional delegation and our other public.
That he had a camera on a service cart in the hallway, and that the security guard was shot.
I'll tell you what, I wish I had some of you on my investigative team. It's amazing some of the information you come up with, but I'll confirm it, yes, one of them was on a service cart.
No, the other question is the one that I wanted to get to. You talked about motive, you talked about premeditation. You want to learn why he did what he did. Videos, can you tell us the number of interviews you're going to have to do that? You talked about you reviewing cameras, videos, computers. Who did he last talk to?
I'll give you a global answer on that. Yes to everything you said. Yes, we are evaluating all that. I can't give you, because the numbers change and it's fluid, Ken, on the number of videos we're evaluating. Just on body camera videos, we had over 67 videos we were evaluating. Okay? So you would say, well, you had a lot more officers at the event than that, Sheriff. You only had 67? No, not all officers are assigned cameras because they work in investigative function or plain clothes. But when they take on the role of special events over time, we don't require them to wear body cameras.
Are you absolutely ruling out any connection to terrorism or anything like that?
We haven't absolutely ruled anything out in this investigation.
Sheriff.
What I can just be, listen, I'm not trying to be coy, right? But I can confirm to you we have not ruled anything out.
Right, I mentioned that.
But I can also confirm to you that we have not ruled that in.
Right.
So we have a lot more questions than we have answers today. I understand that. We're very well aware of that. I'm sorry, go ahead, sir. I apologize. I forgot to introduce the special agent in charge of the Las Vegas field office, Aaron Rouse, and they've just been such great partners with us throughout this investigation. And as you know, we've been joined at the hip from the very beginning.
Good evening. Obviously, I'm Sheriff Joe Lombardo with Clark County. This will be one of many press conferences we have provided in order to provide the public information that is occurring. And then, so the sequence of these events tonight, I will provide you some, can we get some help back there? I will provide you a sequence of some updates of the investigation as we have moved forward since the last time we spoke to you. Any specifics or continuance of any global investigative leads that you need to be aware of. Special Agent Aaron Rouse will provide that information associated with that. Okay? And then subsequently I will return to the podium, assist with some Q&A, and then Commissioner Sisolak is available if you have any questions of the Commissioner. And then obviously we have Senator Dean Heller who wished to address the audience also. Today I will provide you some updates on our investigation of the mass shooting Sunday night at Route 91. More than 100 investigators have spent the last 72 hours combing through the life of 64-year-old Stephen Paddock to produce a profile of someone I will call disturbed and dangerous. What we know is Stephen Paddock is a man who spent decades acquiring weapons and ammo and living a secret life, much of which will never be fully understood. He meticulously planned on the worst domestic attack in United States history. As many of you already reported, Paddock rented a room at the Ogden Hotel in downtown Las Vegas. This has been confirmed. Okay? Reasons that ran through Paddock's mind is unknown, but it was directly during the same time as Life is Beautiful. We have recovered evidence from that location. We don't know if it is evidence, but we have recovered items in video evidence. And I don't want to, you know what, I'm using the wrong term. Evidence is not the term. We have recovered video from there to review Mr. Paddock's actions while he was there. Now, it's important for you to understand, this was not, the rooms were not rented by the Ogden. It was done through Airbnb by a private owner unknown to the Ogden. So we have very great cooperation from the owners of Life is Beautiful and the Ogden, and they are in full cooperation. Okay, while we have already spoken to many people who have contacted with Stephen Paddock at hotels and places he frequented, we still have more interviews to conduct. Since Monday, there have been many questions for us to release a timeline, and today we have one. I want to point out the information previously reported on the time of the first shot was based on a CAD report. That's our computer-aided dispatch. That's what we do for calls for service. So that report is dependent on who a particular person calling in and that timestamp. But what we have done through the review of body-worn cameras, we are able to pull it back to previously from 10:08 to 10:05. So Carlos. So I'm going to give you a chance to review that, take photographs of it, and I'll walk you through each timeline. So at 10:05, the first shots fired by the suspect. This was seen on closed-circuit television from the concert venue. 10:12, first two officers arrived on the 31st floor and announced that gunfire is coming from directly above them. 10:15, the last shots are fired from the suspect per body-worn camera. So if you're looking at the math, 10 minutes. 10:17, the first two officers arrive on the 32nd floor. 10:18, security officer tells the LVMPD officers he was shot and gives the exact location of the suspect's room. Now you notice a minute delta there. Before they broadcasted it, obviously they were in a conversation with the security guard immediately upon them exiting the elevators. Between 10:26 and 10:30, 8 additional officers arrived on the 32nd floor and began to move systematically down the hallway, clearing each room and looking for any injured people. They moved this way because no longer hear the gunfire of the active shooter situation. 10:55, 8 officers arrived in the stairwell at the opposite end of the hallway nearest the suspect's room. So when I say nearest the suspect's room, you can imagine the doorway of the hotel room. This stairwell and this door access is approximately 2 to 3 feet away. 11:20, the first breach was set off and officers entered the suspect's room. They observed the suspect down on the ground and also saw a second door that could not be accessed from their position. So it's a suite, and you have a main area of the suite, which is a living room, kitchen, dinette area, and then on opposite ends of that is 2 bedrooms. Okay, so if you do the math on that, all the way up to 11:20 from 10:05, we're looking at 75 minutes. So the young lady here in the front with the red phone, you had mentioned 72 minutes, so now you see where those minutes came from. Okay? At 11:27, the second breach was set off, allowing officers to access the second room, and no one else was located within the hotel room. Okay, these are following extenuating circumstances as to why it may appeared that there was some delay or undue delay in reaching the suspects. Okay, the officers in the first strike team reached this 32nd floor within 12 minutes, which is phenomenal, of the first shot being fired. When the officers arrived and confirmed the location of the suspect's room, the gunfire had stopped. In accordance with their training, the officers retrieved a master key card from the injured security guard and began to systematically clear each hotel room. So imagine the elevator bank in the center, 150 feet down on a triplex hotel was the suspect's room. So there's several rooms along the way. Because of no firing was occurring, they could not hear additional firing. They believed it was important to evacuate in case the suspect was barricaded. While the first strike team did this, the second team, made up of 2 K-9 personnel, a SWAT officer, and patrol officers, navigated the numerous stairs wearing heavy tactical gear, carrying a large bag with tactical equipment, and holding rifles in order to have a closer position to the suspect's room. And that is within that stairwell and that doorway adjacent to the room I described previously. They attempted to secure the front doorway of the suspect's room, but as they entered into the hallway, they could see the room service cart, and readily apparent on the room service cart were cameras. So they pulled back and they waited for the approach of a full SWAT team. Keep in mind, this delay was not undue, it was purposeful, and no shots were being heard by the suspect at this point. Eventually a plan was formulated, entry was made, suspect was seen laying on the ground. They encountered a closed bedroom door which was locked, and they breached that door. Additionally, found no other suspect. Another investigative issue was cameras. Questions was presented about cameras and whether they were recording. We determined none of the cameras were recording. There was 2 cameras on the room service cart out in the hallway. There was one on the peephole of the front door, and additionally there was a baby monitor camera placed in the general family area of the hotel room. None of them were being recorded. One thing I left out was the initial approach, and they looked out in the hallway. When they observed the cameras on the room service cart, it was obviously there was several rounds discharged through the door, and through the blast of the bullets through the door, you could actually see a weapon through those openings in the door, but no suspect was seen. Now, those rounds were the strafing rounds that he put through the door in order to shoot at the security guard. Okay, the other thing I wanted to update you on is the search warrant of the suspect's vehicle located at the Mandalay Bay. I had presented that there was ammonium nitrate recovered, but there were several cases within the car that had not been searched yet at the last briefing I provided you with you. So within those cases, there was 10 1-pound containers of tannerite, 2 20-pound containers of tannerite, and approximately 1,600 rounds of ammunition. So tip line, this is an ongoing investigation. We can never not have enough information because we are continuing to run down leads, and it's important for us to get all the information we can on Mr. Paddock, because right now we're trying to prove his intent or understand his intent and the history associated with this, and whether or not he has any accomplices. So we ask people to still call in to 311. If you're out of state, 702-828-311, and then the FBI 1-800-CALL FBI, and that is investigative and also for electronic media. If you're able to call them, they will provide you the ability to download that online into their system.
Most of you also now know the name of the Mandalay Bay security guard who you've all named in the media, and I'll just reaffirm to you that Jesus Campos is a true hero. I can tell you now just a little bit more that I know about what he did that particular day. We now know that he was dispatched to what they call a door alarm on the 32nd floor. He went up there to investigate the open door, and as he was doing his job diligently, he came under fire by our suspect. As you know, he was struck in the leg. He turned around and retreated. He notified his dispatch, which was absolutely critical to us knowing the location, as well as advising the responding officers as they arrived on that 32nd floor. I can tell you that this was a remarkable effort by a brave and remarkable man. I want to say today that I don't think we've done a good enough job recognizing him and his actions, and for that I apologize. I just want to take the moment and clear the record that he's an absolute hero. First and foremost is that our partner, Special Agent in Charge, Aaron Rouse, has some information about a new media plan that the FBI has launched and I would like him to explain exactly what that is. Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Under Sheriff. I'm very pleased to announce that Clear Channel Local here in Las Vegas has partnered with the Metropolitan Police and with the FBI to reach as many people as we possibly can. We're starting an information campaign seeking true knowledge as to what happened in the events leading up to and involving this incident. The billboards will be displayed throughout the Las Vegas area. They will have the badge of the Metropolitan Police and the seal of the FBI on it, along with the terms, if you know something, say something, along with a phone number, which we've agreed will be 1-800-CALL-FBI. This is critical for us. As the Undersheriff mentioned, we have not stopped, we will not stop until we have the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse. And next up, I would like to have.
Tells you the timeline that he was shot at 10:18. That's when he tells you he was shot. When was he shot?
I can give you the exact time off the timeline off camera. I don't remember. I don't have it in front of me as we sit here. I'd be clear about the timeline, right? What the sheriff and I have both explained to you at different times is information that we had initially. We went back and reconciled it with what was on the body-worn camera as well as what was in our computer-aided dispatch, the CAD data. And so all of that timeline that we represented to you is what we have to the best of our knowledge.
Go back to the security guard. Are you able to tell us what time the alarm went off on the 32nd floor and why it was going off? And is it at all possible that the security guard was shot before Paddock was firing into the crowd?
So you have a two-part question: is what time did the suspect go up? Or I'm sorry, the security officer arrived to check the door, and why? The question, or the answer is that the door alarm went off, indicating that the door was ajar. So the officer was dispatched up to check that specific time. We have it. I don't know what it is. And I'm sorry, your second question?
Is it possible that he was shot before Paddock was even firing?
The question is, was the security officer shot before the suspect was shooting into the crowd? The answer to that is yes, we believe he was shot. That we believe that he was shooting into the crowd, and then the security officer was shot during that event. I'm taking two more. Go ahead.
The percentage of injuries, I know we had discussed this earlier. Do we know how many people?
Today I'll provide you with some information, but mostly I hope to clarify or provide more updated information on some of the details that have been reported in the media. A number of you have already reported that the brother of the suspect is in town, and yes, he is. We are in contact with him, along with other family members. I will not discuss what came out of those interviews, but every piece of information we get is one more piece of the puzzle in this case. Last week, we talked about the single person whose action helped pinpoint the location of the suspect, and that was the Mandalay Bay security guard Jesus Campos. As you might imagine, Mr. Campos was not only injured when he was fired upon, as he did his room check about the door alarm down the hall from the suspect's room, but he was also extremely shaken up by what happened to him. He was able to confirm for us exactly what he heard and saw in the moments before he was shot. We have uncovered no evidence to show there was a second shooter. We have uncovered over 200 instances of the suspects traveling throughout Las Vegas, and he has never been seen with anyone else. We have no evidence or intelligence that the suspect was linked or had affiliation with any known terrorist groups or ideologies. In coordination with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, a comprehensive picture is being drawn as to the suspect's mental state, and currently we do not believe there is one particular event in the suspect's life for us to key on. We believe he decided to take the lives he did, and he had a very purposeful plan that he carried out. As I've said from day one, we want to figure out the why to this, and we'd like to know the motive. That is our most important goal, to prevent any further action associated with another individual who is contemplating this, or what exactly went along in the suspect's mind to enable him to pull off such a complicated event. So moving forward, barring any critical information obtained during the week, the next press conference will be conducted at the end of the week, Friday. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Sheriff,
There's a
Chris,
deposition that came out today from 2013 that said he was taking Valium. Have you found any medications?
We have found some evidence of medications. I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
Can you tell us about the note? Was that to cause damage? What were those notes?
What note?
The note that was in the suspect's room.
There was not a note in the suspect's room. We recovered a document that had numbers associated to it, and I'm not at liberty to make a guess on what that was for. It could be. We're figuring that out.
Sheriff, also in the suspect's room, according to accounts we heard last night, there were drills. According to other accounts, the guard, Jesus Campos, heard drilling in the room. What drilling was done, and what do you think it was to accomplish?
So the question is, what drilling was done, or what was the intent of the suspect? There was drilling done. It was to the doorway, adjacent wall to the doorway, and just an assumption would be to either place a camera or to place a rifle.
Can I follow that?
But the drilling was not completed.
Did Officer Campos hear drilling?
Yes, he did.
How's Mr. Campos doing? Do you have any
Can I finish his question, sir?
And he knocked because of the drilling?
No. There's never been anything out in the public forum about knocking. He was investigating an open door. He became of the drilling sound.
Sheriff, what time exactly did Jesus Campos sustain, the injury? What's the timeline? What time exactly?
Bear with me while I get that for you. Well, it's fairly simple for me to obtain. What was the question, ma'am?
Can I also ask, in the days...
What was the original question?
What time he got to sustain the injury?
21:59. That would be 9:59.
Sheriff, you checked that the gunman was practicing shooting before this incident that you know of?
No, I can't confirm that.
Sheriff, are you saying that the security guard was injured, Mr. Campos was injured before 10 p.m. and the shots were then fired at 10 p.m. into the crowd? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I don't know where you're getting your numbers, but you are correct. He was injured prior to the mass volley of shooting.
So to follow that, he's shot at just about 10 o'clock. The shots into the crowd begin at 10:05 and go on for, we said at one point 11 minutes, but 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So can you give us what you think?
Okay, I don't want to get in. I appreciate what you're saying, Ken.
Receipts that have been obtained from the valet security system.
Ma'am, that's not how we conduct this service, okay?
It says that he checked
If
in
I'm
with the
presented with a
suspect,
question,
has the timeline changed? Because the FBI has reported that.
that's not how I conduct press conferences,
Well,
ma'am.
has the official timeline changed? Because
Please
this
stop
happened-
asking your question. There's a decorum that we have here, and I will finish Mr. Ritter's question.
Thank you. So if Officer Campos or Security Guard Campos was shot at just before 10 o'clock, and the shot's out the window, as you described, then there were about...
So let me help you with that, Ken, because you picked up on it. Yes, the timeline associated with the original shot and Mr. Campos has changed through investigation, as I have conveyed to you from the very beginning. And your zest for information and my zest to ensure the public safety and the calming of their minds is some things are going to change. Now, they are minute changes, okay? There's not this all-encompassing answer associated with the information that we presented before. In other words, it's not completely inaccurate. But what we have learned is Mr. Campos was encountered by the suspect prior to his shooting to the outside world. Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff, you referenced the comprehension profile that's being drawn up. Can you talk about what threat your department is looking at regarding the shooter's mental condition and how important that is to your investigation?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by threat.
Like what avenues are you guys going down looking at his mental?
Well, as you can imagine, anything that any mental health or medical help he's had throughout his life, we're attempting to obtain any and all information associated with that. Additionally, the behavioral analysis unit from the FBI is on the ground here locally, and we're attempting to utilize their expertise in discerning those matters. What I will provide with you is behavioral analysis is in LA also, Los Angeles, while interviews with Ms. Danley are being conducted.
Do you have any idea why Mr. Campos was near that room when he got shot prior to the actual?
Yes, we had an alarm associated with an open door. It was not the suspect's open door, it was another one.
Fair.
Yes.
Were there any other writings discovered in the room, either numbers or otherwise?
I'm not aware of any. I personally am not aware of any.
Sheriff, were there any diagnoses that he had that you can share? Anything about his? You talked the medical thing as part of the investigation. Is there anything he was diagnosed with or was taken that you can comment on?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Was he diagnosed with any conditions or was he taking any?
No, we don't have a complete comprehensive evaluation of his mental condition. We will provide that as we become aware of it.
Sir, so after Mr. Campos was shot, before the mass shooting happened, did he alert security? Did they know? I'm just wondering if there's was any delay in his reporting? Or
No. He immediately, upon being injured, notified security of his situation. In close proximity of Mr. Campos being shot, there was also a maintenance worker that presented himself on the 32nd floor, and Mr. Campos prevented him from receiving any injuries.
Sheriff, do you think the suspect's engagement with Mr. Campos maybe sped up the timeline of the shooter?
I would not make that assumption. I'm not privy to that.
There's actually two questions.
What was Mr. Paddock doing before the shooting? Is there any evidence that he was gambling that same night, or do you have any video evidence of what he was doing?
We have a pretty comprehensive timeline prior to the shooting, but more importantly, it's up in the public forum. He was gambling the night before. I do not want to disclose his actions up to the shooting because that's part of the investigation.
To end Mr. Paddock's actions, what caused him to stop shooting out the window? Do we know?
We do not know at this point.
And then to follow, you have said earlier you believe he had an escape plan. Do you still think that?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a matter of discussion out there, whether what I said is accurate or not. And what I am comfortable with saying is what I believe. Mr. Campos, not Mr. Campos, I'm sorry, the suspect, I don't want to say the suspect's name, I will call him the suspect. We know that he attempted to shoot at the fuel tanks. We know that he had some personal protection equipment in the room. We know that the car that was down in the parking garage still contained binary explosives. So I would be comfortable in saying, which I believe, depending on the splash he made during the shooting, would it enable the first responders to be directing their attention in other locations, which would enable Mr. Paddock to just leave the hotel. And we do not know whether he had planned to cause additional harm outside of what occurred at Mandalay Bay.
Was there ever a trigger mechanism found that would have led to the car?
A trigger mechanism?
We talked about finding electronics in the room. We talked about
Oh, you mean something that would no, the explosives were not set up in order to detonate with a trigger.
So, Sheriff, is it your belief?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the security guard, and when did the police know that the security guard was shot? Before the gunshots at 10:05 p.m. or only after the active shooting began?
They weren't aware of him being shot until they met him in the hallway after exiting the elevator.
Sheriff, when did he check into the hotel? And what date did he check into the hotel?
Best of my recollection, we have information on the 25th. I had told you previously the 28th. We're trying to confirm his actions between the 25th and the 28th. I'm under the belief that he was not occupying the room between those days.
Sure.
Medication specifically was he taking?
I already said that, ma'am. I can't answer that question now.
Can you address specifically, you said that you don't want to say the suspect's name, can you just briefly talk about why that is?
Why? Because I don't want to sensationalize his actions. I believe if he doesn't have a name, nobody can relate to him.
Sure.
Yes, sir, in the back.
In recent days, we've heard reports about cell phones found in the suspect's room. How many cell phones were found, and was there any sort of indication that he might have been communicating with anybody?
Aaron, do you have that information?
I don't think it's prudent to give that out.
Okay. No, we don't have that number. I don't know the number personally.
Sure. You mentioned that something about how you had observed his movements over 200 times in the valley. Can you talk about where he was going, what he was doing?
No, I can't reach. I wish I could give you a comprehensive timeline and his movements. That would assist us in developing possible witnesses, but we're still running that down. It's still a really comprehensive evaluation of all the electronic equipment associated with this individual, and that's going to take quite some time. What I am proud of is how far we've gotten to this point. And yes, I'm frustrated. If you look in the public media, the perception that I am frustrated at the speed of this investigation, yes, I am. It isn't because nobody is not doing their job. It's because this individual purposely hid his actions leading up to this event, and it is difficult for us to find the answers to those actions. And that's why it's important for you to give me some deference, the FBI some deference, and the police department some deference to the ability to run down these leads. Now, I have noticed in the public forum several assumptions, unconfirmed statements, and actions of this individual put out there, and it makes it very difficult for us to follow the leads that we currently have when we're trying to chase our tail in other directions. And I have said this to you before. I appreciate all your help. You're a force multiplier for us because there's a lot of hidden pieces to this puzzle, but there's also a happy medium associated with that. And I will answer Mr. Ritter's question. That will be the last question.
We learned yesterday that the FBI went again to the Mesquite house. Did the FBI also go back to Reno, that house there, and the vehicles? Are we recombing? Perhaps you can tell us if we're recombing evidence.
Yes, we are. The question was, is the FBI, along with LVMPD, revisiting the crimes or the personal property of the suspect? Yes, that is accurate. Along with the behavioral analysis detectives, they are also present, and maybe we can discern some additional evidence as a result of that revisit. Okay, thank you very much. And like I said previously, we anticipate the next press conference to be Friday. Barring any key evidence that we become aware of, we'll plan on Friday. Thank you very much. All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm obviously Joe Lombardo, Sheriff Clark County, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. This press conference will probably be a little bit different than you experienced earlier. It's going to be more informational versus Q&A. So my intent today is to provide some clarification on some outstanding issues out there in the public forum on reference timeline, fuel tanks, a couple other items. And then I'll provide the opportunity for SAC Rouse of the FBI to address the audience, and then we'll have a closing of the conference. Okay? And a couple of these items I will read from the narrative because I don't want my comments to be construed or changed. So I wanted to ensure the accuracy of that. But most of this conference will be done strictly through my narrative provided to you. Okay? Okay, first and foremost, I want to give you an update on the injuries. This has been a big deal on my mind, as it has been the public, and I think it's important for you to be given an accurate picture of what is occurring associated with the injuries of the 1 October event. So as of 8 o'clock this morning, I was updated with the most current numbers. And let me back up just a minute. You know, in the early throes of this tragedy, I had advised each and every one of you that items of information were going to change. The dynamics of this investigation is far-reaching, it's wide, it's huge, and you can't expect exact answers in the early throes. My intent in the early throes were to give you the information to provide that calmness in the community to ensure that we didn't have a second player or a third player out hiding in the community intending to cause us harm. So there was no integrity question associated with that, as I've experienced through the cyberspace, questioning my integrity. I provided you the information as I knew it, and everybody in here knew it was going to change. So we will get through that. I'm not giving you 100% satisfaction associated with what I'm going to give you today, because I think some of that's going to change. And we will not know that until we're completed with this investigation. So back to where we were. I think it's important for the community of Clark County to realize we use 17 separate medical facilities to accommodate the injuries associated with this event. And that speaks volumes for the medical community here in Las Vegas, in Clark County. And it seems to be lost in the narrative associated with this, that it was strictly a public safety, fire, and police event. No, it was including the medical community. And I think it's important for me to give them their due respect. So 17 separate medical facilities. Today's numbers, 546 reported injuries. 501 of those have been discharged. In other words, they responded to a medical facility, they were treated for their wounds, and subsequently left to seek a healing process wherever they chose to do so. 58 is still the number of individuals that have died. Now, this is the important piece. 45 individuals are still hospitalized. Some of those are in critical condition. So 58 may raise. By the grace of God, it doesn't. And we shall continue to move forward. The medical profession will provide all the medical care necessary, but sometimes it's people meet their demise outside of our control. So I'm hoping that number does not raise, but today's number is 58. The fuel tanks. I'm going to read this narrative so my words do not get changed, but I want to provide you some information in reference to the fuel tanks. It is believed the fuel tanks were fired upon with intent. McCarran's leaders have safety protocols in place which they re-examine following any safety-related incident. The leaders have already contacted experts in fuel storage out of the abundance of caution. I am more than confident that they will immediately implement any changes or security augmentations if they are so advised. I have been advised there is a very low probability that aviation fuel could be ignited by gunfire, and the tanks are outfitted for continual release of vapors. So that is the situation of the fuel tanks. Any future information that needs to be provided, reference that, will be provided by the Public Information Office out of McCarran Airport. The dates of the 25th versus the 28th. This was not breaking news, no matter who believed it to be so in this forum. We were aware of the discrepancy of the 28th versus the 25th in the early parts of this investigation. What we weren't aware of is why the date of the 28th was utilized in the early portion of this, as I was provided this information as part of the person registered in the suspect's room. We have come to learn the suspect did occupy the room on the 25th, and the situation on how the room was compensated or paid for had changed, and the name as part of the registration had changed on the 28th to include Mary Lou Danley. So that was the confusion associated with that. No matter what the perception is, whether we were being non-transparent or we were attempting to be subversive, is false. I was acting on the information at the time I was provided it. The autopsy. Yes, there has been an autopsy performed on Mr. Paddock, or the suspect. In the early evaluation, there was no abnormalities observed visually. As a matter of practice in the forensic science, his brain has been shipped to an appropriate evaluation facility in order to take a microscopic evaluation of the brain. So the initial report that there was no abnormalities was a visual inspection of his brain. So it's yet to be known whether there is any abnormalities to be presented at a later date. Now the timeline. Unfortunately, a great deal of my investigators' time has been preoccupied on this timeline. In the public space, the word incompetence has been brought forward, and I am absolutely offended with that characterization. This is a very dynamic event, very big event. Thousands of people involved, humans involved in documentation, and every venue of information involved in this investigation. So, the information was obtained via security logs, Officer Campos himself, body-worn cameras, hotel cameras, lock interrogation, my dispatch, LVMPD dispatch, hotel and private cameras, and interviews. So imagine bringing all together to ensure that we are drawing an accurate picture. So I'll provide you a little more information on that. I still stand by the time of 21:59, 9:59. It's important that you continue to listen to me. 9:59 is important. It wasn't inaccurate when I provided it to you. The circumstances associated with it is inaccurate. Okay? I am very well aware of the MGM statement provided yesterday. I agree with their statement. I'm not in conflict with their statement. But here's what I will tell you. We were provided the time of 21:59 as a human entry into a security log. Through investigation, we have determined that Mr. Campos had encountered the barricaded door adjacent to the suspect's door at approximately 21:59. In his attempt to gain entry to the 32nd floor, he required him to ascend to another level and eventually make access to the 32nd floor. He went to the doorway that he was dispatched to originally to address the open doorway. He mitigated that situation and subsequently received fire from the suspect. When you culminate that timeline associated from the initial 21:59 to the 22:05 timeline that we are still stand by as the initial volley of fire, Mr. Campos received his wounds in close proximity to 22:05. He attempted to relay that information via his radio, and it was confirmed because he also relayed that information via his cell phone. So the timeline associated to both of those sources have been verified. 22:05, The number that was provided earlier referenced the majority of fire upon our community. We still stand by that time, and that was done by the combination of different sources that I listed for you earlier. 22:17, 12 minutes. That is when our officers first arrived on the 32nd floor. 12 minutes. You are very well aware the suspect fired at approximately 10 minutes. Upon our arrival on the 32nd floor, the firing had ceased. We did not believe we had continually had an active shooter. At that point, we conducted evacuations of the rooms adjacent to the suspect's room, and you know the rest. So there is no conspiracy between the FBI, between LVMPD, and the MGM. Nobody is attempting to hide anything. Reference this investigation. The dynamics and the size of this investigation requires us to go through voluminous amounts of information in order to draw an accurate picture. My attempt, like I stated earlier, is to give you the information as I know it, unverified, to calm the public, not to establish a legal case. Everybody understand that? No question, sir. Now we're going to get into future of the investigation. I don't want to put a percentage of responsibility associated with this investigation because it would not make sense, but I'm here to tell you we are standing hand in hand with the FBI in the continuance of this investigation, in the beginning throes of it and in the continuance of it. Our portion at LVMPD has become contracted. My concern was the initial safety of the community, whether we had any other bad actors out there that we had to address, and I feel confident there are no other individuals intending to cause harm to our community associated with the 1 October event. Now it's become protracted, and that's where the FBI has their expertise. We are establishing the timeline of the suspect's life, his motivation, and everybody else associated with him throughout time. And it requires us to rely on the FBI's resources for that success. Nobody's acquiescing in my department to this. I am not acquiescing, and nor is the FBI coming in with a hammer and attempting to take over. This will continue to be a joint operation. With that being said, I want to give the opportunity for Aaron Rouse to provide some statements.
Thank you, Sheriff. I am Aaron Rouse. I'm the Special Agent in charge for the FBI in Las Vegas. In support of our partner, from the beginning, we established a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week command post with agents, analysts, task force officers, and many support personnel. We have deployed over 200 employees from across the FBI to Las Vegas, including many with specialized positions. Globally, we have hundreds of agents covering every facet of this investigation. Nothing will be overlooked. We have made significant progress. To date, we have found no signs of ideology or affiliation to any groups. Hundreds of interviews have been conducted so far. Close to 2,000 leads have been covered so far. Extensive review of digital media on a multitude of devices is ongoing. Over 1,000 pieces of evidence have been collected and are being reviewed by the FBI laboratory. Hours and hours of video footage from hotels continues to be reviewed. FBI victim specialists from across the country are here assisting victims and families of the victims. More than 1,800 victim questionnaires have been completed, and the return of personal property continues. We continue to ask you If you have factual information in furtherance of this investigation, please call us. If you know something, say something. The number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The FBI, nor our partner, we don't rush to conclusions. We ask for your patience and will not comment on specifics of this investigation while it is in process. This is in keeping with the long-standing FBI tradition. As I said from the beginning, this is our city. It is your city. Las Vegas is a resilient city, a microcosm of a resilient nation. While we grieve as a community, we will use that energy to learn as much as we can about this horrible crime so that we may prevent another one from happening. I thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. So before we close out today, I want to provide you another written narrative. I want to read verbatim in support. In other words, bring a better light to what's occurred and the carnage that is associated with our community. There's some bright spots, and I don't want anybody to take offense when I've completed my comments today. There's 1,000 heroes out there, but I'm going to bring it home to my department, and I think it's important for you to hear it. So, the first narrative: in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, Sergeant Garrett Everett arrived at Reno and Haven and saw the need for medical triage area. For hours, Sergeant Everett and other LVMPD officers, along with the off-duty nurses, paramedics, and firefighters, triaged at least 50 gunshot victims. They ran out of tourniquets and began using anything they could find to stop the bleeding, to include their own hobble devices they used during normal course of their duties. These officers calmly took care of the wounded and the dying as they waited for medical transport, at times placing the critical victims on the backs of trucks so they could get them to the hospital quickly. Not all the victims made it out as the night wore on. Those same officers were assigned to guard the deceased victims, not allowing any of them to be left alone. So the undersheriff and myself, Kevin McMahill, took it upon ourselves to go out and visit some of my officers yesterday to discuss their mental state, to thank them, and check on their overall condition. These particular officers sustained some substantial wounds, and some of them you have heard in the public forum already, and some you haven't. But there's a couple key individuals I want you to write about. And one of them is Brady Cook. Brady sustained 4 separate gunshot wounds. And when I say separate, that's entries and exits. It's not actually 4 separate bullets. And an important piece on Brady is the suspect was firing upon the crowd. As our officers started to arrive via vehicles, which Brady was occupying one, it is readily apparent to me that he adjusted his fire and directed it toward the police vehicles. So the response of those individuals, I believe, saved lives. No matter what his personal vendetta is against the police or not, maybe he was preventing the wolf from getting to his door sooner than later, but he chose to fire upon the police vehicles. Brady sustained a substantial wound to his shoulder, through his bicep, into his chest, and out his back. And the reason why I bring this one up, he asked me if he could go back to work today. Samuel Whitwer. Excuse me for my emotion. Samuel was laying on his couch with a very intensive wound to his leg. During the melee and his attempt to evacuate victims, he sustained a broken leg. but he remained on scene and provided security for the medical personnel. So at this point, I want to thank the community. I want to thank you for letting me be your sheriff and Vegas strong. Thank you.